Vertical Raise is the premier online donation platform, utilizing email, text messaging, and social media campaigns to exponentially increase the reach of your fundraiser. With detailed tracking and the complete personalization of every page, Vertical Raise provides an easy system that works. Our experienced representatives have made us the most effective fundraising platform available. We look forward to the opportunity in helping elevate your program to the next level and reaching your goals. Visit online or call today.
This is a Queen Bee Radio High School sports presentation.
Welcome to the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup, presented by Vertical Raise Milwaukee. I'm joined by Steve Prestegard to talk about some boys basketball to begin the show. We are both a bit depressed after the Packers have been eliminated, but there's some really awesome basketball and some really awesome teams to be paying attention to. And we'll start off with a bit of an upset to begin the show in the Six Rivers West. River Ridge beat Potosi on Friday night, 67-58. In the game for River Ridge, Brandon Davis scored all 19 of his points in the second half. Brady Bungie, 18 points on the game as well. He was 5 of 5 from three-point land. In the game, Potosi led 30-18 with 3:24 to play in the first half, and River Ridge outscored Potosi from that point on, 49-28. Potosi still in first place, and then River Ridge and Schellsburg are tied for second. Schellsburg did beat River Ridge head-to-head earlier in the season. They play again next week on Tuesday. And Steve, the Six Rivers West, we said last week that it was going to be Potosi's to lose, and now all of a sudden that two-game cushion is now won, and now pretty much all bets are off. Potosi's got to show up every single game the rest of the way.
That's very true. They still have several games to play yet, obviously. The thing that was interesting is that Mike Uppett, after the game, he didn't say that they had, he said, for instance, that they were getting good shots. He thought they weren't just weren't dropping in. Sometimes, and I think we've seen that on the schedule in the last week elsewhere as well. If you squeak by an opponent, or you dominate an opponent when the opponent didn't think he was going to get dominated, or she didn't think they were going to get dominated, that makes them angry, and they come out more motivated the second time. And sometimes, as strange as it sounds, that happens when a team is playing on the road. We'll see that when the girls segment comes up. But Potosi and River Ridge is always a throw out the records kind of thing anyway. So I just think the thing that's interesting is that they had that size lead in the first half. Potosi had a 7-point lead at the half, and it all went away in the second half. That's kind of unusual, but I think that probably more than anything else speaks to the rivalry of Potosi and River Ridge.
I agree with that, and you and I both know Potosi's a very unique gym in that gym can be loud and it can be very hot, especially when you have two rival teams in there. And I thought that this was a very impressive win for River Ridge. And, just talking with RJ Osterhaus, who called the game on the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel that evening, this was very much a River Ridge win, more so than it was a Potosi loss. River Ridge was very much in control after they were able to break into that 30-18 deficit late in the first half, and just played extremely well. Brandon Davis had the most outstanding half of basketball that he's had in his high school basketball career, and River Ridge gets the win. Again, Potosi's still in first place, but River Ridge and Schellsburg in second place with 2 losses on their record. But they do go head-to-head again for the second time. River Ridge will host them on January 30th next week. So a week from today when we're recording, which is Tuesday. But when this drops, it'll be Tuesday. Let's look at the SWAL now, where Mineral Point stays undefeated. They beat Southwestern on Friday night, 59-46. And how about this for production off the bench? Jackson Wendhausen, 25 points, 6 of 8. From three-point land in that game. And we've heard Coach Dan Burson say this in a number of pregame interviews, and he said this when we had him as our one-on-one with a Great One guest a few weeks ago, that Mineral Point, they're deep. there's no drop off when they have to go to the bench or rotate some players in. And boy, did Jackson Wendhausen have himself quite the game with those 25 points. What was interesting about that game, though, was that Southwestern played on back-to-back nights against two undefeated teams heading into those games. Southwestern did get the win against North Crawford on Thursday night, 65-64, and then had to quickly go to Mineral Point and play there. And, just having called that game between Mineral Point and Southwestern, I do think that there was a bit of fatigue towards the second half. Southwestern definitely played Mineral Point tough in that first half, but the Pointers, when you can rotate anywhere from 8 to 10 players throughout the game against a team that's not as deep, anywhere near as deep as they are with Southwestern, it definitely showed that Mineral Point just had more firepower in that matchup. And just kind of looking at how things have been shaping up across the conference, no real changes at the top, and really the attention as far as how the title's going to shake out or how the SWAL is going to be decided. That game coming up a week from Friday between Mineral Point at Darlington, that's pretty much the conference title. If Darlington wants at least a share, they got to win. If Mineral Point wants it by themselves, they got to beat Darlington a second time.
Well, I mean, how many conferences have two of the top teams in the state in the same conference? And that's what you have with 14-0 and 15-1 overall records for the Pointers and the Redbirds. And the other thing to keep in mind, we say this every once in a while, this isn't necessarily their last meeting. In fact, frankly, it seems pretty likely that those two are on a collision course for a third meeting, unless something weird happens, and obviously that has. But I mean, talk about two really deep teams, and they have kind of enviable depth if you think about it, because of the ability to, if somebody gets hurt, you can replace them. Somebody isn't playing well, you can adjust playing time, competition for starting spots, and all of that. And I have a suspicion that Southwestern scouting report probably didn't say, "Hey, look out for this Wendhausen kid," and then you just stare and it's like, what did we miss? When this kid's like lighting you up basically, and he kind of wasn't on your radar. So Mineral Point is really rolling right now, but of course Darlington is also really rolling right now, and that matchup that they have, that's going to be great basketball.
Yeah, definitely will be. Again, Mineral Point at Darlington a week from Friday, and we will have that one on 97.7 Country WGLR. That'll be on February 2nd. Let's turn our attention to the SWC. Platteville still undefeated in conference play at 5-0. They got back-to-back wins on Friday night against Dodgeville, a game that you saw, and then the game on Saturday against Galena. Platteville hosts River Valley coming up on Thursday night. River Valley tied for second place in the conference with Dodgeville. And then Lancaster, now over 500 after winning 3 straight games. They got wins against Belmont, Richland Center, and Fenimore. They will play Prairie to Chien on Thursday night. And I think, again, kind of status quo as far as the conference goes, but 2 nice back-to-back wins for Platteville to keep their conference record intact, staying undefeated, and then getting a nice win against Galena, an interstate matchup where, the Galena Pirates have been playing well on the boys' side as well.
Well, they're in first place in the NUI West. I don't know anybody saw that coming, although that conference race is far from over. But both of those games were kind of the same game in different places with different rules, because it was very close at the half. As a matter of fact, Galena led Platteville at the half. Platteville needed the last 2 baskets in the first half to take the lead over Dodgeville. Dodgeville tied it, but then Platteville went on a run and got a lead, and then kind of kept it in the 10-point range, and then all of a sudden just stomped on the gas the rest of the way about the last 10 minutes or so. What was interesting also is they had guys that didn't score any points in the first half, scored all of them in the second half. Zach McLean was one. I believe Davin Edge was another. Lucas Ludlam from Platteville, I'm not sure if people know this. He's really one of the best all-around players in the area. He scored 26 points, I believe it was, against Dodgeville. Plays defense well. He's one of those kids who pretty much, I think, could probably play any position on the floor and not embarrass himself. Platteville got to kind of they had the funny part about it, the Friday games, they hadn't played in a while, 8 days since their win over Lancaster, and they were kind of rusty. And it took them about a half to, kick it in the right direction, which they obviously did. And then they had to come back in a situation where, they tipped off like 7:15 on Friday night, and then barely 16 hours later they're playing again down in Dubuque. So that is a situation you're really not going to see ever unless there's some really bizarre thing in the postseason where games have to get moved up, during the day for some weird reason. But it was a good stretch for Platteville, a good pair of wins, and for the Hillmen, and it's kind of their race to lose at this point, and it's kind of hard to figure out when you look at everybody else. Well, who's going to end up finishing in second? It's rather a surprise, perhaps, that the team with the best overall record, other than Platteville, is Lancaster. And I'm not predicting anything, obviously, as far as Thursday goes, but Platteville had no problem playing River Valley the first time they played them in Spring Green. I'll just say that.
Yep, and coming up on Thursday night, Lancaster is at Prairie du Chien. We'll have that one on Super Hits 106 and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. And then the big non-conference matchup on Saturday, Platteville hosting Potosi. And we'll have that one on ESPN Radio, AM 1590 WPVL. You'll have the call of that one, Steve. And you've seen both Platteville and Potosi pretty regularly throughout this season. What are you looking for from that matchup? I think that has blockbuster, potential to it, where it's going to be a grinded out type of game, and really kind of a coin flip with just how good both those teams have been.
Yeah, and it's a very rare meeting between the two of them. I think you're starting to see more of that sort of thing because of trying to fit 24 games into a schedule. Potosi, the thing that they have an advantage in more so than most Division 5 schools is they've got size up front. They're going to need that because, of course, Platteville's got Zach McLean, 6'9". Keep in mind that Potosi, until their loss to River Ridge, their only other loss this year was to Darlington. So they've done well against everybody. They also do have later on this season a non-conference game against Mineral Point. And if you think Platteville's going to be competition, try taking on the Pointers. But it's going to be a really interesting game. I think, Platteville's going to be favored for a couple of reasons. But somebody gets hot for Potosi, people get in foul trouble for Platteville. Any a different outcome than what you might think is certainly not out of the realm of possibility.
If that should be a fun one. Again, that one will be on Saturday, Potosi at Platteville on ESPN Radio, AM 1590 WPVL. Let's go south of the border for a bit, because we were just talking about the Galena Pirates. They will be in action on Wednesday night, or last night by the time that this airs. Galena taking on East Dubuque, a big matchup in the NUI West, and matchup between first and second place teams. And looking at that matchup, Steve, what do you make of this conference? This has been a very interesting one with, obviously we've been following Scales Mountain quite a bit over the last two seasons, obviously, them going to state, but Galena kind of unexpected, and East Dubuque playing well this season as well.
Yeah, interestingly, these two teams played at the very start of the year. That was actually the first Illinois game we did way back in the Turkey tournament at Scales Mound. It seems like it was before Thanksgiving. Now I think about it, and it was. But I think that certainly East Dubuque has been a pretty pleasant surprise because of their, that they had a pretty good team, an okay team last year, 17 and 16. And what was interesting about that is Galena went 23-9 last year, but got beat by East Dubuque in the postseason. So that was kind of how that happened, sort of thing. And the other thing to keep in mind is I'm trying to look at the schedule real quickly here. I think that these two teams might have one more. I don't see it on my schedule here, but they might have one more. Actually, they do. February 15th. This is the first time that they have played each other in a conference game but they're playing each other again coming up in the last regular season game. And it wouldn't be a surprise to see them play
Mhm.
4 times, play again in the postseason. So, I mean, independent of anything else, these are two teams, separated by the pretty stretch of Highway 20 between Galena and East Dubuque. They are long-standing rivals. They've got, in the case of Galena, they've got Cooper Glasgow, who is a great player. I think that there's fewer people kind of stand out necessarily for East Dubuque, but obviously they're doing something right because they're north of 500. So overall, and they're, as the phrase goes, they're winning the right games because they're winning the conference games, and that's why they're 4-1 in the conference right now. So given all of that, I think it's going to be a really interesting game between Galena and East Dubuque.
Should be a fun one. Looking forward to seeing how that one shakes out. And then let's go back to the Wisconsin side, the Six Rivers East, where Barneveld, Pecatonica, and Argyle, at least from what I saw, all had one conference loss in the latest standings. And kind of looking at the schedules, it's, the three teams are all beating up on each other. Barneveld lost to Argyle. Argyle lost to Pecatonica. Pecatonica lost to Barneveld. So it's really a 3-horse race, and all those teams have to play each other for the second time as the second half of the conference season rolls around. So the Six Rivers East, a very interesting conference that we're obviously going to keep tabs on. And then the Ridge and Valley. So we talked about North Crawford falling to Southwestern Thursday. They have a rematch with Ithaca on Thursday night. North Crawford barely won that first matchup, 55-54. Ithaca also ranked in the WisSports.net coaches poll. I know the new one just came out earlier today. I didn't see where they were ranked, but I know that they were in the number 10 spot last week. And the Ridge and Valley, very compelling. Again, we mentioned North Crawford and Ithaca at the top of the conference, but this rematch, definitely makes things interesting to see how the conference championship is going to shake out.
Well, rematches, because in the case of the Six Rivers East, you have Barneveld and Peck playing each other Thursday night at Peck. And in the Ridge and Valley, you have North Crawford and Ithaca playing each other at Ithaca. And so that's going to be really interesting to watch how those two match up. It's a little hard for us, here when we don't see those teams very often, obviously. But, North Crawford and Ithaca, I'm not sure whose radar they were on, at the start of the year. But, each of them has lost one game. Ithaca's loss was to North Crawford, and they were undefeated until they ran into Southwestern. So, and once again, this is another case where you're looking at teams that are not necessarily playing each other for the last time. And I always find that interesting. I ask coaches about that when I do pre-games. The fact you're playing them now and you might be playing them again in a month, does that change your approach? And every coach always says, no, it doesn't. It's one game at a time. And that obviously makes logical sense. But you always kind of wonder, if you think, or like going off the floor after the game, if your coach thinks, you know what, I think I got to try this that we haven't done when we play them again. Should we play them again at some future point? We've seen how many years now that where teams in the SWAL beat up on each other in the postseason also. And where they had half sectionals like the SWAL postseason tournament.
Right.
Well, Division 5 could have that same sort of thing happening with both the Six Rivers West and the Six Rivers East on one half, and then the leftovers from the Ridge and Valley, and throw in Royal as part of all of that.
Yep.
In the other half of the sectional.
Yeah, it's very compelling. And you mentioned during the high school sports roundup last week how big that matchup between Southwestern and North Crawford was going to be, because we were going to see how good North Crawford was. And obviously that game was very competitive, a 1-point margin. And, it wouldn't be surprising if Southwestern and North Crawford run to each other again, down the line in the postseason. But boy, is that Division 5, in this corner of the state, just absolutely loaded. Not saying that Division 4 isn't, but I mean, that one just seems, I'm curious to know how seedings are going to be, but obviously a lot of season left to be determined. So that's where things are at conference-wise. Some of the storylines that we're keeping tabs on the conferences around our area. But before we wrap up the boys basketball portion of the high school sports roundup, we are going to go back to Steve's high five, and he has come up with a new one because we forgot to mention it last week. And this week, do you want to run down your high five, or do you want me to run it down for you? I have it up right here.
Yeah, I can do it. I actually I decided that number 5 this week is going to be Platteville. Number 4 is Potosi. That might switch after Saturday, but we'll see. I have North Crawford at 3rd, Darlington at 2nd, and then drum roll please, number 1. Actually, not really that much. For a surprise, Mineral Point. And I think they're number 1 until somebody beats them, which could be very soon. But Mineral Point has withstood everything at this point as far as teams that they've played against, and competitive nights and off nights and all of those sorts of things. They just look like a team that is so deep that you could send them into Division III and they would more than represent themselves. But that could change when they get Darlington again.
Right. Yeah, I think the high five has the right 5 teams. I think 3 through 4 or 3 through 5 might be swapped around. I do think of the 3 teams there between Platteville, Potosi, and North Crawford and Potosi just recently lost games. So I would say that Platteville's probably playing better basketball. They still have an undefeated record. And I think if Platteville were to play both those teams head to head, I do think Platteville comes up with a win. We'll know for sure about that, as you said, coming up on Saturday. North Crawford, I would say North Crawford / Ithaca, depending on the outcome of that game. Ithaca's no slouch either. And I believe that North Crawford is Ithaca's only loss. I know that their only loss conference-wise, but it might be their only loss overall if the records look at that. So I think Ithaca is right there in the mix. That'd be my only grievance, I guess, towards it. But again, it's your high five. You make the rules. I mean, it's yeah,
it should be. I guess you're going to be the playable truther now, huh?
Yeah. Well, I was gonna call you out on that. Saying, are you really a Platteville truther if you're not gonna, put them above, some of the other teams? And and plus, if you put Platteville in that number 3 spot and then go Platteville, Potosi, North Crawford, Mineral Point beat Darlington, Darlington beat Potosi. That's there is a natural hierarchy there, and yeah, I do think that Platteville's better than that number 5 spot. I would put them at 3, keep Potosi at 4, and then put North Crawford / Ithaca at 5. But
there is a phrase from one of my favorite NFL writers, Greg Easterbrook, who says, "All predictions wrong or your money back."
Right.
So, this thing could be somewhat rearranged next week. In Platteville's defense, I have to say there are 3 losses this year: Mineral Point and Darlington in the first week, and then their other loss is Monona Grove, which is a Division II school, and that was the game that they played at Fiserv Forum in Milwaukee. And I understand they're looking for a new coach there now. Then,
yeah.
Who knows?
Yeah, interesting news. When audio technology doesn't cooperate, apparently the head coach gets fired. What are the chances? So looking ahead to our boys basketball coverage again, coming up on Thursday night, Lancaster at Prairie to Chien on Super Hits 106 and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. Saturday, Potosi at Platteville on ESPN Radio AM 1590 WPVL. That's set for a 2:00 tip. Looking ahead to Monday, Lancaster at Cuba City on Super Hits 106 and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. Tuesday, the 30th, we have Benton at Highland on Extreme 107.1 and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. And then Shullsburg at River Ridge, the battle between the 2 teams tied for second in the 6 Rivers West going head-to-head. We'll have that one on 97.7 Country, WGLR, and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. And that'll wrap up our boys basketball coverage for this week's edition of the High School Sports Roundup. But keep it here. We got the Subs.com highlight reel, and we got some girls hoops to talk about as well. The High School Sports Roundup presented by Vertical Race Milwaukee continues after this on YouTube and SoundCloud.
Looking for a checking account with no monthly requirements or service charge? People's State Bank's People's Checking Account is just what you're looking for. This account includes free debit card, online and mobile banking, bill pay, and much more at no cost to you. You heard that right. No cost to you. We're your local community bank ready to serve you. People's State Bank. Member FDIC.
Back on the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup presented by Vertical Raise Milwaukee. It's now time to talk high school wrestling, and I'm joined by Scott Tolzman to run down some of the stuff that we had last week, as well as a big weekend of wrestling that we have coming up across our Queen Bee Radio family of stations. But Scott, let's talk about the dual meet that we had on 97.7 Country WGLR and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel last Thursday. Prairie du Chien hosting Mineral Point, and Prairie du Chien flexed their muscle on the pointers. Granted, Mineral Point didn't have their ace wrestlers in the dual meet. Rowan Carey was out with injury, and Cade Rule was not, or he won by forfeit, so Prairie du Chien didn't put a wrestler up against him, and Mineral Point had to go with a younger lineup in the dual meet against Prairie du Chien. And you and I got to see Prairie du Chien against Iowa Grant Highland, and Prairie du Chien certainly showing why they were the number 2 ranked team in Division II.
Yeah. Prairie's a decent team this year, and when you look at them, they did lose some good wrestlers last year, but they're still putting some very good, talented wrestlers back on the mat this year. And nothing against Mineral Point, but they're down this year. I mean, one of the few years that they got some growing pain, and they graduated a few good wrestlers last year, and it's more of a rebuilding year for them this year. So they're not quite as strong as they have been in the past. So, yeah, when you look at what Prairie du Chien did to Mineral Point, you kind of think, wow, what's happened to Mineral Point? But those that are in the wrestling community realize that they're just in a rebuilding period.
Yep, it's a rebuild, but it's also a learning experience for those younger wrestlers going up against some pretty tough competition, and probably almost an ideal time to have a dual meet like that with the postseason coming up around the corner. It gets those wrestlers some experience and that all important mat time that you and Raz talk about during the broadcast, getting those younger wrestlers some time against some tough competition to focus on the things that they can work on heading into the postseason.
Yes, it is. And those young kids, getting that mat experience throughout the year is going to pay off towards the end of the year, and maybe not so much towards the end of the year, but going into the years if they're only freshmen or sophomores, they got a couple more years, and the more mat time they can get as younger wrestlers, the better they're going to be as they get older. And, you think about the match, Prairie won 10 matches, Mineral Point won 4. But when you look at it, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 matches that were decided by points. So, some of those matches could have went either way, went Mineral Point's way, and the score would have been closer. So, and looking at Mineral Point's lineup, there are a lot of young kids in there. So.
Yep, absolutely. There were a lot of younger wrestlers in that lineup, quite a few freshmen that were wrestling in that meet, and Mineral Point coming away, or Prairie du Chien coming away with the win against Mineral Point last Thursday. Let's move ahead to the triangular among Fenimore, Iowa Grant Highland, and Darlington Blackhawks. This was a very anticipated triangular, but the one that we'll look at closely is Fenimore defeating Iowa Grant Highland. I think that the outcome was kind of expected, although the score, I think, kind of surprised some people. From what you gathered, Scott, what stood out to you about that Golden Eagles win over the Iowa Grant Highland co-op?
You look at the score. Truthfully, I probably would have said Iowa Grant could beat Fenimore this year. Looking at what I've seen before, it was Fenimore 33 and Iowa Grant 28. That's 5 points. Where could we get those 5 points someplace down the line? Fenimore ends up winning 8 matches. IG wins 6, but there were 3 matches that were really close in decisions. IG won one of them, and Fenimore won 2. So you flip those around a little bit, and IG could have been on top. So it's another one of those where um, both teams. Well, Fenimore gave a forfeit at 106, but IG's got a full load, 14 wrestlers, and again they do have some young kids, and when they go up against some tougher opponents, like Fenimore has at the upper weights, you're expecting those kids to get those pins, and at 215 and 285, Fenimore ended up getting pins. Wolf pinned his kid and Gratz pinned his. So that kind of ran away with it because they started at 106, and up to that point, IG was winning. But and you can kind of hope that those younger kids stay off their back. But as a wrestling coach for a long time, that doesn't always happen when you're going up against some pretty good studs.
Yeah, and it's one of those things that you and I talk about quite a bit during our wrestling broadcast. It's not sometimes, winning, it's how you win, or sometimes how you lose. It's about, not getting pinned, and sometimes those points can swing the momentum either way, or ultimately decide the match. And with a 5 points margin of victory for Fenimore, is it one of those things where if you're Iowa Grant Highland, do you feel a little bit more confident in anticipation that you might see them again down the line, say sectionals?
I think so. I mean, if I was Ryan right now looking at it for IG, his kids wrestled well. That maybe they could have done a little bit better. They gave up 3 major decisions, so those are 3 extra points that Fenimore got. Where can I pick up maybe a win here, or maybe get a pin where I won?
Right.
His when I really look at the score and where the kids came about, there's a couple matches that could go either way and swing that match toward G. And it that would be an interesting match seen in the team sectionals. I mean, I really think that would be a a great match to call again, because I think IG learned some things, and Ryan's a pretty smart coach, and I think he could maybe next time knock Fenimore off.
I remember last year during the sectional round when Iowa Grant upset La Crosse Aquinas to set up the match in the sectional final against Fenimore. Obviously, Fenimore completely dominant during the postseason last year, and I'm sure Coach Stout of Fenimore is going to be very strategic in which wrestlers compete at which weight classes and which ones give his team the best opportunity. But I mean, you look at how Iowa Grant Highland has performed throughout the duration of the season. I thought going into the season that it was very much Fenimore just probably gonna run roughshod through pretty much everyone, but Iowa Grant has looked pretty darn impressive, including the matchup that you and I had against Prairie du Chien. That was a 2-point margin of victory, and if you can hang with the number 2 team in Division 2, you can certainly match up quite well against the likes of Fenimore.
Yes, yes, and nothing against Fenimore. I mean, Fenimore has graduated a couple good wrestlers from last year, and they're have to fill up those weights a little bit, but they do have some outstanding wrestlers, and so does Iowa Grant. When I really look at the clash this year, I think it's going to be really a 3-way race: Prairie du Chien, Fenimore, and Iowa Grant. And you sprinkle in some of those other teams like Dodgeville, they probably are going to walk in there and win 3 weights. And Darlington Blackhawk is probably going to win at least 1. So it's really going to come down to those 3rd and 4th, 5th and 6th places. And when you think about Fenimore, IG, and Prairie, they got those kids that can do that. So it will be a real good tournament in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, I'm looking ahead, at the clash to see if the weight classes hold serve and if everyone wrestles in the weight classes that they're supposed to. There are some stacked weight classes heading into the clash. It's going to be one heck of a tournament that we'll have coming up, not this weekend, but the following weekend, and we'll have that 97.7 Country WGLR. And yeah, again, we're not discounting Fenimore by any stretch of the imagination, but Iowa Grant Highland has certainly done some work, and especially after losing to Fenimore on Friday night, they go and win the TKO tournament on Saturday as well. So there's some tough competition in that tournament as well, and Iowa Grant Highland. And Fenimore, I would anticipate they're going to run into each other at some point in the postseason. And it'll be very interesting to see how many of those wrestlers go head to head at the clash as well. It's going to be a very fun couple weeks and leading into the postseason coming up for high school wrestling.
Yes, and I know Bi-State's been a while in my brain. As I get older, I get a little bit more senile. But if I remember right, Iowa Grant, I think, took third in their division.
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah.
And
that sounds right.
Still the top 3 teams out of all of them.
Yep.
And that has a good showing for Iowa Grant. You come out third in your own division, but yet you're still in the top 3.
Yeah.
So it says a lot, and it also says a lot for D3 being as tough as it was this year.
Yeah, of the 72 teams that were competing, I mean, that is,
Yep.
Bi-State, we know how big that tournament is, and how how strong that tournament is, among the wrestling community, and the way that Bi-State, I thought, was a really strong showing, and one of those, if Iowa Grant Highland hadn't arrived by that point, they certainly made their case as one of the top teams in Division III, certainly. So,
Yep.
yeah, very strong showing for Iowa Grant Highland, and we'll talk about their matchup that they have coming up in a bit, but let's focus in on the dual meet that we have coming up Thursday night on 97.7 Country WGLR and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. River Valley traveling to Lancaster to take on the Flying Arrows, 2 wrestling programs with very rich traditions and some strong followings with them. About these programs quite well, having coached against them. What stands out to you against River Valley, against Lancaster?
These are two teams that pretty much fill up the weight classes, but they're both young this year.
Mm-hmm.
Lancaster, like Valley, they have a couple good wrestlers, but yet overall wise, they're just a very young team. So when you look at these 2 teams, it's really going to be interesting to see which young kid from either team is going to get those wins. And hopefully they can win with a pin or a major decision and get those extra bonus points. But it's really going to come down to those young wrestlers and how they do for each team.
Right. Yep, and it's one of those. The interesting dynamic with this too is that they're going to wrestle again 2 days later at the at the duel. So I'm kind of curious, as a coach, are both coaches kind of figuring that it's going to be an exact rematch, or are they going to shift things up a little bit differently? Maybe throw some curveballs in, this matchup as opposed to the matchup that they have on Saturday. I'm kind of curious how that's going to shake out.
Well, being, like I said before, with me being a coach and knowing the years that I had young teams and rebuilding a little bit, you know what? I put the kids out where they're going to best do their job. And if it means the same lineup next time, even though I might have gotten beat, I'm still going to make sure those kids are learning. And in this case, RV and Lancaster, if I were their coaches, I wouldn't do a lot of shifting around. I would just put the kids back out there and let them go and see what happens.
Yep, again, River Valley at Lancaster coming up Thursday night on 97.7 Country WGLR and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. We also have a dual meet on Friday night as well on 97.7 Country and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. Mineral Point and Iowa Grant Highland. Again, we talked about Mineral Point being younger this year, and I'm curious how the injuries or the injury to Rowan Carey, I should say, factors into it. But obviously, I would anticipate that Iowa Grant Highland is going to be favored. But again, two very strong wrestling programs, two very strong followings. Raz and I got to call the dual meet at Iowa Grant 2 years ago, and the gym at Iowa Grant was jam packed. Anticipating a great environment for wrestling on Friday night. What do you anticipate seeing between Mineral Point and Iowa Grant Highland?
You're going to see the same thing. They are very well followed. They are very good programs. They have been. Mineral Point probably has been the stronger program out of them. So that gym is going to be full. But overall, I think IG is just too much this year and much stronger than Mineral Point. So I'd give the match to Iowa Grant. But you know what? It only takes a few upsets to change everything.
Mm-hmm.
And in wrestling, it's like any sport. You can't really say, well, my kid's better, so I know he's going to win. It doesn't always happen. They
Right.
can make a mistake and pin themselves, like I've seen, and turn a match. But I still think IG is a stronger, better team, and I would probably give it to IG, but Mineral Point will give everything IG can handle.
It should be an interesting dual meet on Friday night. Mineral Point at Iowa Grant Highland. We'll have that one on 97.7 Country WGLR and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. And then coming up on Saturday, Scott, the SWC duels, all 6 SWC programs competing, including Belmont, Platteville, Dodgeville, Lancaster, Prairie du Chien, Richland Center, and River Valley. We'll have coverage of that beginning after 8:30 in the morning on 97.7 Country WGLR, and we'll video stream all of the matches on the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. Now, this is something that was added last year, I believe, right before the postseason began. You and Raz and Mark Evenstad got to see the duels last year in Dodgeville. I think this is a really cool way to kind of tie up the season and get all of the conference teams in the same gym, kind of have a round robin style format to close things out. But knowing that you're going to be wrestling, at least five matches or 5 duels throughout the duration of the day, how does that? What are these coaches thinking about as they head into this style format on Saturday?
I like the format. As a coach, when I was at Belmont, we started the Belmont tournament duels where we wrestled 5 duels. Got all the kids a chance to wrestle 5 times. Sometimes, when you go to individual tournaments, if you lose twice, you're done. This way, it gives your kids 5 matches. I like the format. I just don't know if I like it this close to conference and regionals.
Right.
I would like to see them move it up a week or 2 and have your conference duels and go from there. It's exciting. It's a lot of fun to watch different matches, and you get to see all the teams in your conference wrestle on the same day right there in the duels. Plus, like I said, it gives a lot of opportunity for your kids to get a match. If you got 2 or 3 kids at a certain weight class, you can wrestle all 3 of them during that day because, you get 5 matches. So, but overall wise, I think Prairie du Chien is probably the top team to come out of it. And then I'm going to go on a limb here and say Dodgeville probably could take second. And then after that, it's a toss-up. It really is because of knowing the teams and knowing some of the teams that have youth and how all this falls into place. Will be interesting to see.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about Dodgeville in particular. I know Raz is pretty high on Dodgeville as well. And, obviously they had, 2 state wrestlers last year, and those are kind of in the lower weight classes, but it seems like that they've gotten some consistency kind of throughout the rest of the team as well.
Yeah. They have some young kids that, it's great to see them out, but they struggle. But, if they can get Spurley back and from the doctors giving them the okay, you're going to have the first 4 weight classes of Dodgeville that are pretty steady. And, 3 of them are state champs. The little 106 pounder Spurley is a freshman. So, it's a, what's the word I'm looking for? Those 4 kids are your kids that are going to dominate.
Right.
It's there. And then they have a few kids that are above average, and then there's a couple kids that are average. So I really think, Dodgeville could give Prairie a run. It'll be interesting. But I still think Prairie's still a little bit of the cream of the crop yet. So, and the other teams, it really depends how they all fall out.
Yep, absolutely. And again, the SWC duels, Belmont, Platteville, Dodgeville, Lancaster, Prairie du Chien, Richland Center, and River Valley. We'll have coverage of that on Saturday again after 8:30 in the morning on 97.7 Country WGLR and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. Scott, postseason wrestling, just around the corner. After the duels this weekend, we have the clash between the SWC and the SWAL. We kind of talked a little bit about that earlier and how big that tournament is going to be. And then after that, super regionals as well. The postseason is already here. And, as the season has gone along, we talked about Iowa Grant Highland being, I don't want to say a pleasant surprise, but, they were expected to be good, but they have shown that they are very, very good and can be one of the better teams in the area. What are some of the other storylines or things that have kind of stood out to you as the season has progressed, and maybe something that you're kind of curious to see, hashes out once we get into the postseason?
I'd have to really think about that. And the only reason I'm saying that is because of the few matches I was supposed to have on the radio got canceled because of the weather. And looking at, looking at a couple teams, I really think this could be Dodgeville's year to sneak out and get into the team sectionals. I mean, I think they can get out of their regional. I think Iowa Grant, Fenimore, Prairie, probably theirs. I guess the storyline I'm going to look at is really down the road is how many of these kids that we've seen in this area will be in the state finals. I really think there could be, I've counted it, between Division 2 and 3, I really think we could have 8 or 9 kids sprinkled in the finals, and that would be a great showing for the 2 conferences.
Yep, I believe from our area, I'm not sure what the exact count was last year, but I know the year before when we covered state, I believe it was 45 wrestlers that we sent to state, and I believe that was including boys and girls as well. Now, with girls wrestling being more popular as well, I'm curious how many more of the girls get in on the action as well at the at the Cole Center. But you mentioned Dodgeville, someone to sneak out. Cuba City Benton Southwestern, I think, is a team to kind of watch out for too. They've got some pretty strong wrestlers in their program as well. A couple of them are ranked, and I think it's one of those things. It just depends on who they match up and when they see them. I think that's something to kind of keep tabs on, because we're looking ahead to see what teams might be going where for sectionals as far as our radio coverage goes. And it's like, well, it's very interesting how those super regionals are going to go. And admittedly, I do like the super regional format where, we have more teams, competing, and we actually send 2 teams out of there to go to the sectional round. It makes for a longer day for us because we're going to be on the air for about 8 to 10 hours. But man, it's shaping out to be one heck of a postseason. I mean, there's so many good. Not only are there so many good teams, so many great individual wrestlers in our area. And, when you can consistently put 40 plus wrestlers at the Kohl Center competing at the state level, where the stage doesn't get any bigger than that, that just speaks how rich the wrestling culture is in our part of the state.
Yes, and it's true. I mean, it's unbelievable. I mean, even the years that I coached, just to see how many kids from this area make it and do well down in Madison, it's a fun time. For me, this has always been my favorite time of the year, and I hate to say it, it's cutting into my ice fishing now because we start Saturday, and I don't have another Saturday off until end of February.
Yeah, La Nina kind of spoiled your fishing trips for the winter so far, and hopefully the ice can hold up for you till the end of the postseason and give you a couple more Saturdays out on the lakes or the rivers or wherever it is that you're going to be at. So, yeah. But we're glad that you're part of our wrestling coverage, and thank you so much for taking the time to go over the very busy wrestling schedule that we have coming up, not just this week, but with the postseason tournaments coming around the corner. Scott Tolzman, kind enough to join us on the High School Sports Roundup, and we'll have more on the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup presented by Vertical Raise Milwaukee after this on YouTube and SoundCloud.
Check out Sups.com. Sups is Southwest Wisconsin's go-to supplement store. Find all your favorite supplement brands at the best prices from local people. Fuel your fitness journey. Sups.com, your go-to supplement store with locations in Fenimore and Dubuque.
This week's highlight reel is presented by Sups.com.
He's got to keep fighting. Counting near fall points. Busser trying to fight off his back. Blake doing a good job. There's the fall. In 58 seconds. That's why Blake's probably ranked number 2 in the state. Matthew needs to be careful. Oh, there's 2. Matthew trying for a throw. He's got him on the edge. Art's going to have to get off his back. It looks tight. And there's the ball. There's the ball. In 3 minutes, 47 seconds, I believe it was. Looking for a Bloody Mary here. He's got a half Nelson. He's driving it. He's got Kite in trouble. There's a minute left. And there's the ball. There's the ball. Eight seconds. Oh, Hurt tries to pull through. That's going to be close to scoring. Oh! He called a fall. Called the fall. I don't know if it's considered a defensive pin here. But Scullion did the right thing. He posted with 2 seconds left. Hurt tries a suicide cradle and gets caught by Scullion for the fall. Near side cradle. Higham has got Outs in trouble. It is tight. It's a tight near side cradle. It's tight. There's a lot of time. And there's the ball. "28 seconds. Cradle Dannenberg's got. I don't know if he can turn him with it, but he's got a leg cradle and he's...
Wow.
Boy, I haven't seen one of these in a long
I've never
time.
seen that.
I haven't seen one of those in a long time, but he gets 2 points out of it. Goes up 8-2 with 50 seconds remaining in the third period. Trying to stick that elbow right in his ear. And it's a ball for Lenzendorf. In 1 minute, 21 seconds. Trying to fight it off. Now he switches to a headlock. And it's pretty tight here. And there's the ball. In 1 minute, 2 seconds, Avery. Prairie Chien over Yana.
Bounce pass into the corner here to Mester. Back out to Rundy. Rotates over to Fritz. Back door, Mester wide open. Layup, good. Rotates to Sletton. Gonna drive left. Now right, down the lane. Kicks to the corner. 3 by Quick. Good. There's 13:38 to play. 3, other end. Worley, got it. Up deep, 12:14 to play. Ball stolen. Morgan Freeman with the steal for Belmont. She'll drive right down Broadway and lay it up for 2. Expect them to be a little bit tighter. Here comes a long 3 by Worley. Mandy Worley's second corner 3 from the right side is good. She has a high arc on those 3s. But if it works, right? 6 points for her. 3 on the other end by Lainey Rickers, and she answers right back. Lainey Rickers drains one from the left side, 38-32 Belmont. Graff, bounce pass right side, driving in Sletton. 3 by Zinkel, left side, got it. It's Reagan Zinkel, her first 3 of the game, and now a timeout taken by Coach McGettigan, 38-35, Belmont by 3. Rickers checks in for Belmont here for Hodgson. Inbound pass taken by Adrian. Adrian in transition, puts it up, missed the shot, gets it back and powers it up for 2. 43-42, Ridge by a point, 4:26 to play. Sletton drives in, kicks to Quick. 3 for Quick, and it's good. 3-pointer left side by Braylon Quick. Makes it 46-42 Ridge. Gets it into Mandy Worley, way out, top of the key now to Zinkel. In the corner, 3. Graff, got it! Shane, 3-point lead, Ridge. Graff takes the inbound, gives it back to Zinkel. It's stolen by Rundy. Out to Lainey Rickers for 3, and she drains it. And we have a tie game, folks. Minute 38 to play. Left, we're still tied at 51. Zinkel has it, top of the key. Ball almost stolen away by Rundy. It's loose. And Rundy gets it. Off the window, she scores and 1. River Ridge inbounding baseline left, throwing it in. It is Worley, Mandy Worley for River Ridge. Worley gets it into Graff. 23 seconds left. Graff has it. Swings it to Worley, right wing. Worley will launch a long 3. It's no good. Rebound, though, offensive board. Back out to Worley, 12 seconds. Now to Graff. Graff, top of the key, 10 seconds. Zinkel has it out on the right side. 3-pointer, got it! With 3 seconds left, 3.6 seconds, we have a tie game. Reese Rundy to inbound it here. They've spread out the floor pretty good. And inbound pass taken by Casey Rickers. Crosses the timeline, 2 seconds. Passes to Laney, puts it up, and scores as time expires! Laney Rickers at the buzzer! 56-54 Belmont. Unbelievable. What a pass. Rickers to Rickers. Casey to Laney, and she puts it up for 2 at the buzzer. Boy, nothing beats a buzzer beater, does it?
Possession back in bounds, now to the left wing. Bounce pass up to the lane line, spinning, jumping, and rolling off the iron. Rebound, Chieftains put back, and a foul. Potosi up 3-0. Back doing offensive business, 3-ball. Aiden up and out left corner is good. His 10th of the season. And it's talked about Chieftains maybe wanting to make a statement a little harder this time around against the Wolves. So far, off to a fast start, 8-0 Potosi. 3-ball right wing, Wolves, and there's the answer. Brady Bunge's 18th of the year. 8-5. Potosi leading River Ridge, passing the post, low post, right, and the layup is good. Shot up, Chien's foot iron, no good. Barano the rebound, passing ahead for Patterson. He's inside the arc left wing. Back on top, Barano telegraphs the pass. It's taken away, and here's a dunk by Wonderland. Rattles all over and falls off the iron. Rebound down to Potosi high in the right wing and post. They'll flash backdoor pass, shot up, blocked, and then the rebound is put back in by Isaiah Groom. Inside Copsey. Now Davis, back left side, Matthew Nice for three, connects. Tosses right side, there's a drive baseline right, toss back out to nobody in particular, and Chieftains have the ball. Runner the other way, layup good for Gavin Wonderland. The lead is now 12 at 30-18. Davis, mid-post right, passes left corner, three ball coming up and can. Bungie has his third. Gavin Wonderland, who gives right wing. Gets back top of the key eventually. A left junction jumper, fadeaway, no. Rebound down for Brandon Davis. He'll try to take it all the way. Layup good with the left hand. A Midwest one bank shot. 2-point deposit on the layup by Brandon Davis. 5-point Potosi lead. Minute gone by, second half. Ball tapped, and the Wolves going to get the takeaway. Carter Copsey's hustle finishes the steal. He's in the paint. Pivots, bounces back out. Ball's left wing. Matthew Nice around the defender, layup good. Davis up top, Copsey for three, got it. Number 17 in the year for Carter Copsey. We are knotted up at 34. There are no inbounds, box variety, baseline right at the bucket, and they lob in for Davis, and the bucket gives River Ridge the lead. No. Rebound down Wolves. Davis up the floor, inside the free throw line. Jumper up and can for Brandon Davis. 13 remaining. Davis free throw line, gives left corner. Copsey a ball fake, a dribble right, gives back. Three ball. Davis cans it left side, and he's fired up. Brandon Davis in his 11th on the season, 42-36. River Ridge by 6. Ezra Groom in for Potosi. The lob comes in to Aaron Edge, who's also back in. Ball right corner. Wonderland rises for three, and he got it right corner. Gavin Wonderland's 22nd of the season to lead his team. 42-39 River Ridge, 11:35 to go. Ball right side. Carter Copsey for three. Hello! Second three-pointer for Carter Copsey puts the River Ridge lead back at 6, 45-39. Ball up top, now right wing, Wonderland for three. There's the answer! Gavin Wonderland, second of the half, 2 timeout on the floor. 8:05 to play, River Ridge leading Potosi 52-44. Wonderland in the paint, leads down low, layup Groom good, brought to you by Wonderland on the assist. Patterson, left then right, now back on top for Davis, gives left side, Copsey to the corner, Bungie for three. He got it! Brady Bungie's fifth three-pointer of the ball game. He's got 18. 57-46 River Ridge. They will inbound. And a three-ball left wing is canned at the horn by Ryan Stoney, but it means very little. River Ridge, 67. Potosi, 58.
Grow your business by enhancing your digital marketing efforts with Queen Bee Radio and Phase 3 Digital. We provide customized solutions based on your business's unique needs, including targeted advertising, website development, and search engine optimization. Contact us at 608-349-2000 or visit p3da.com/Platteville to learn more.
Back on the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup, presented by Vertical Raise Milwaukee. It's now time to talk about some girls hoops, and we're joined now by the number 1 ranked Galena Truther, Steve Prestegard, again for our chat about girls hoops. And let's start off before we get to Galena about the big matchup that we talked about last week on the Roundup, the matchup between Platteville and Prairie du Chien and the conference implications it would have in the SWC. And Prairie du Chien getting the win over Platteville, 59-40 in that contest. And because of that win by Prairie to Chien, there is now a three-way tie at the top of the conference. Platteville with a 5-1 record, followed by Prairie du Chien and Dodgeville with identical 4-1 record. So it's officially become a three-horse race at the top of the SWC, with the second half of the conference, firmly underway. Talk about what you saw in that matchup, Steve, and how this makes the conference title picture shake out.
Well, what's interesting about the game was that it actually dates back to December 1st. You recall that Platteville had lost their first 4 games of the season, although against 3 ranked teams. And they got to Prairie du Chien for the SWC opener, and everything went well for them. They played very well. They harassed, they actually had an unreal edge in rebounds, 38-17, and ended up winning the game by 11, and kind of wasn't really that close even. Unfortunately for Platteville, Prairie du Chien obviously did remember that game because they came out and played much better than they did in the first meeting. They shot, I think, pretty close to up above 50% from the field in the basketball game, held their own rebounds. Turnovers, they did not, they kind of held their own there also, but they just simply played better. And the quote after the game from Brandon Temperley, the Platteville coach, was that Platteville just didn't play tough enough. And sometimes it happens when you have 2 relatively even teams, and the first one kind of really decisively beat the team the first time. The team that lost remembers that, and that's kind of what happened. Talked to a couple people afterward, and they said the same thing, that they were kind of afraid that something like that might happen in this particular case. And so Platteville actually technically has a half game lead because they actually played and beat Richland Center Monday night. But in terms of the loss column, they do indeed have a 3-way tie now in the SWC.
Yeah, very interesting conference, and we'll see how it shakes out the rest of the way. We do have a big matchup coming up on Friday night on Extreme 107.1, Lancaster at Platteville, the team in first place just by virtue of having 5 conference wins heading into that one. So we'll have that one again on Friday night on Extreme 107.1. Let's move into the SWAL, where things are getting a little interesting in that conference as well. Cuba City still at the top of the conference with a perfect 7-0 record. Now, mind you, at the time of this recording, this was when Mineral Point and Cuba City were supposed to play head-to-head, and in that rematch where Mineral Point had their only conference loss. But moving ahead and looking ahead at Thursday, Darlington goes to Cuba City. Darlington, the other 6-1 team that's tied with Mineral Point in that second place spot in the SWAL. We'll have that game on Super Hits 106 and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. Very intriguing how the rest of the conference games shake out between Cuba City, Mineral Point, and Darlington when they're all going to be playing each other. I think for Darlington, obviously, this is probably more of an elimination game in terms of the conference title picture, but Darlington is having an outstanding season overall, 12-4 on the campaign. A really successful season, and I don't want to say that they might be overlooked, but they've certainly inserted themselves into the picture in the SWAL. Still Cuba City to lose, but still 2 very good teams right in that mix.
Yeah, that's true, and it's kind of a case of, and we said this before about the SWAL boys races. Whoever wins the regular season meetings, there could be a third meeting with some combination of those 3 teams. Certainly, in fact, that's quite likely, I think, in the postseason. The other team that is actually doing pretty well, perhaps better than expected, is Fenimore. Unfortunately, to this point, I think they haven't been able to beat anybody above them yet. But they're 10-6, right? Yeah, 10-6, and they're 4-3. So they're definitely the best of the rest in the SWAL right now. But it does certainly seem as though Cuba City, Point, Darlington, in some order. I think the thing that, one of the interesting questions, who's better, Mineral Point or Cuba City? Because Cubans haven't lost in the conference, but they have more losses overall. And, as it happens, Mineral Point has just 2 losses this year. Unfortunately for them, one of them was to Cuba City. So that's kind of interesting to do that little bit of argument as to, is Mineral Point better or Cuba City better? The other thing about Cuba City specifically, in a couple of weeks, they have a doubleheader, boys, girls, against Platteville. And I think that girls game is going to be extremely interesting because you have leader of the SWAL and one of the leaders of the SWC and 2 long-standing rivals. They were in the same conference for a while. Now they're not, but it's a great non-conference rivalry, and they're both on the same night, which is pretty cool.
Yep, indeed. I will just point out with Cuba City, their schedule as far as their losses, their first loss was to Beaver Dam, who's 12-5 and one of the better teams in those upper divisions in Division 2. A loss to Oregon, who is undefeated in Division 1. They also lost to Galena and lost to Arrowhead. So those are about as quality losses as you can have. With their schedule, and with Cuba City, being winning against Mineral Point head to head, I definitely think that it's probably Cuba City as the top team in the conference. But again, that's why you play the games, and if weather cooperates, we'll see how that matchup ultimately pans out. Again, they were supposed to play on Tuesday night, but the weather postponed that game. I'm not sure when that game will be rescheduled, but obviously if and when it does get rescheduled, we do anticipate on carrying that on one of our Queen Bee Radio family of stations down the line. The SWAL's really, really interesting coming down the line in the girls' side. Speaking of very interesting conferences, how about the Six Rivers West and how crazy that conference is shaking out? Belmont defeating River Ridge on a buzzer beater by Laney Rickers, as you might have seen on the Subs.com highlight reel just a bit ago. So Belmont essentially eliminates River Ridge out of the title picture. You still have Highland and Belmont in first place with identical 4-1 records. Shullsburg at 3-1. Shullsburg going to play Highland, I believe, next Monday night it'll be on the 29th on 97.7 Country WGR on the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. Originally, Highland was supposed to host Boscobel, but they bumped Boscobel so that they can get this conference game that I believe you were actually supposed to cover before the second major snowstorm hit through that particular week. But so we'll see how Shullsburg and Highland pans out. But Belmont getting a scare from River Ridge, and the Timberwolves now sitting in that 4 spot. But boy, pretty much from 1 through 4 in the Six Rivers West, anybody can beat anyone, and it's so unpredictable what happens in those Six Rivers West games on the girls' side.
Well, yeah, and if you look at the standings, it's kind of a strange look. Highland, Belmont, they're basically the same record, very close. But Shullsburg only has 5 wins this year, but 3 of them are in the Six Rivers West. River Ridge is 10-5, but they have split their Six Rivers West games, so they're actually in 4th place right now with 10. Even though they're 10-5 overall, that's mathematically that's a little weird. And I suppose you want some strange math. Think about if Shullsburg were to sweep the rest of their games, or go 8-2 or something like that, conceivably they could win the title and have a losing overall record. And I'm not quite sure how that should be the case, but but the reality of it is that in the Six Rivers West, and because of having a co-op team, and also in the SWC, you only play 10 conference games, which means if you schedule a complete schedule, you have more non-conference games than conference games. That's a more commonplace thing in Illinois because they have more games overall in their season, but it's still a little unusual in Wisconsin. And, I guess we'll see, because this, among other things, is the last time that this arrangement is going to take place schedule-wise next year. The Six Rivers the two divisions are going to schedule each other as part of conference games, but it's certainly entertaining to watch this, especially, I mean, what's more entertaining than watching a buzzer beater? Especially a sister to sister buzzer beater.
Right.
That was kind of fun.
And Rob Spangler had one heck of a call on that as well. Again, we will have Schallsburg at Highland on 97.7 Country WGLR and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel on the 29th, this coming Monday evening. And let's look at the Six Rivers East for just a moment, because it's still Argyle Pecatonica at the top and Albany Monticello in the number 2 spot. Argyle Pecatonica 5-0 on the conference play side of it, 17-1 overall. Albany Monticello 4-1, 15-2. And then there's everyone else. Blackhawk is 7-9 overall. Barneveld 7-8, and Judah 1-15. Still a 2-horse race in the Six Rivers East. We'll see how those head-to-head matchups come down the line. In the Ridge and Valley, Wazeeka Steuben still undefeated in conference play, have a 2-game cushion over Kickapoo. And Wazeeka Steuben hosts Seneca on Friday night. Kickapoo hosts Lafarge. And we'll move into the NUI West girls, where, again, our number 1 ranked Galena Truther with us. Galena 4-0 on the season, 19-1 overall. They were number 2 last week. They are now number 1 this week. I guess from your vantage point, Steve, is this a Galena team that you feel is getting stronger as the season goes along, based on the teams that they faced and how they've looked in conference play?
I think they are, because it wouldn't necessarily show the scores, but and I've been saying this all year, that they're getting contributions from people who were not just Gracie Furlong and Eddie Hafel and Taylor. I forget her last name. Never Zero.
Bertram?
But Bertram, yeah, that's it. Yes,
yeah.
Thank you. Everybody focuses on those 3, but they're getting contributions. They have 2 other starters who are freshmen, and the first player who comes off the bench is an underclassman, and the second player who comes off the bench is a freshman as well, or sophomore. So this is a more deep team than they've had, seems to me anyway, than the 2 teams that went to state the last 2 years. Among other things, they have more height. I mean, Nevaeh Hauber is 6 foot easily. And, we mentioned this last week when Galena beat River Red Scales Mountain, where they finally put away the Lady Cats. It was on an 8-0, I believe it was, run. And not a single point was scored by Bertram or Hafel or Furlong during that whole stretch. So I do think actually that they're a deeper team, and it's one of the great things about having a group of players as great as those 3 are, because that means the other, everybody else is, well, look, just contribute. And we had that pregame or postgame interview at the beginning of the season when one of the girls, Eddie or Gracie, I forget who, said that, basically it's, they're not going to yell at somebody like a freshman if she takes a shot and misses or something like that. Just get back and play defense. There's actually, I think people know this, that Galena was featured on Channel 8 in the Quad Cities on Monday. They got some schmuck to announce the basketball game underneath, but
yeah,
Jamie Watson, the Galena coach, said something that I'm going to steal for future use, which is that, he was asked if the number 1 or number 2 at the time ranking going to state back-to-back was pressure on the kids. And he thought that it probably was, but they keep saying pressure is a privilege. Mm-hmm. And pressure is something, if you think about it, if you're good, that's when you get attention and when you get circled on everybody's schedule and all of that. So, pressure is a privilege. That's a great coaching line, I think, and it's not as if you watch that team and, oh boy, everybody's, gunning for them. Like, not like you can tell. They just go out and, surgically execute people, basically. That's the thing about that team. They don't, they're not quite demonstrative or anything like that. They just go out and they're an execution machine, basically. and they're number 1 in Class 1A now.
Yep, absolutely. And the next time that we will see the Pirates will be on the 29th, Monday night. The Pirates come to River Ridge, Wisconsin. And that will be on Extreme 1071 and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. Again, the 29th, the Galena Pirates, the number 1 ranked team in Class 1A in the state of Illinois, coming to the Wisconsin side to take on the River Ridge Timberwolves. Other girls' games that we have on the schedule again, coming up on Thursday night, Darlington at Cuba City on Extreme 1071 and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel. On Friday night, Belmont at Shullsburg, big matchup in the Six Rivers West. That'll be on Super Hits 106. Shullsburg at Highland on Monday night on WGLR and the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube channel, and the Galena Pirates at River Ridge, like we just said, on Extreme 1071. By the way, next Wednesday, River Ridge Scales Mound goes to Galena. You'll have that one on Wednesday night, Steve, on Super Hits 106. That should be one heck of a ball game, and I believe one of the rematches that the Pirates will have on that Wednesday night, and probably one of the bigger conference games for them on the season.
Yeah, definitely. There's River Ridge Scales Mound is maybe the one team that can take down Galena based on the fact they have the best overall record of anybody not named Galena in that conference. So that's probably the best shot. And once again, it's not necessarily their last meeting because those two teams faced each other in the regional final last year. And that is not at all out of the realm of possibility this year.
Yep, agreed. And now let's go into Steve's high five for the girls' side. You want to run down the high five for the girls' side of things, Steve?
Yes, in 5th place, Albany Monticello, only 2 losses this year. 4th place, Mineral Point. I could have put Cuba City in there also, but I decided that 2 losses, Mineral Point probably is there. Wazeeka Stewart, well, they only have 1 loss this year, so they're 3rd. Argyle Pecatonica, they have only 1 loss this year, so they're 2nd. But number 1 is number 1 south of the state line, Galena, and I'm not quite sure how they didn't become number 1, except according to the Max Preps formula, they dropped from 1 all the way to 2. But now they're back to 1, and their ranking speaks for itself. Put it that way.
Yeah. I guess the only thing that I would point out, and you mentioned it, I personally would swap Mineral Point with Cuba City just because Cuba City does have that head-to-head. I do believe, sometimes it's not the losses, but who you lose to. And how competitive those games are, and Cuba City's been very intentional about their schedule and putting some tough opponents ahead of them in preparation for a deep postseason run. Now, Mineral Point can obviously take down Cuba City. They're supposed to host the Cubans in that rematch, and a game at Mineral Point could change things a bit and kind of sway how that momentum goes for Cuba City. Otherwise, there's some really good girls teams, and a lot of them that only have a couple losses on their record. And not only are they, the losses are to quality opponents. I mean, these aren't chumps necessarily that these teams are beating either. So some very good girls basketball among those teams in the high five. Again, my only real point of contention would be Mineral Point being swapped with Cuba City, just because Cuba City has beaten them. And to me, it's kind of hard to justify if you're going to have Mineral Point in there. Cuba City should also be in there just because of how crazy their schedule has been this season. So that is the high five.
All I'll say, what I say, if you don't like my list, do your own.
Yes, exactly. And knowing that the people that watch this, they might, and we'll get the hate mail on AM1590 WPVL.com, and that's where we go. So yeah, that's the high five for the girls side. And Steve, your thoughts on the overall landscape on the girls side. I think there's a lot of interesting basketball coming up over the next couple of weeks. I think the landscape's changed slightly over the last week, and 3 of the 3 conferences that we have been kind of overseeing throughout the duration of the season. Anything in particular stand out to you over the results of the last week on the girls' side?
Well, I guess I was a little bit surprised. I wasn't necessarily surprised that Prairie du Chien beat Platteville. I was surprised that it was not at all a game. It was, for one thing, it was 17 points at the half. Platteville did get it to 10 at the start of the second half, but didn't get any closer than that. That was a little bit of a surprise. But I think the records really stand to mean is that there's a lot of even teams up at the top. And, you could just use your example. Mineral Point plays Cuba City. If they played 10 times, they might split 5.
Right.
I think that given the fact that Platteville and Prairie are done playing each other for the regular season, the matchup between Platteville and Dodgeville, which is I think in a week and a half, is going to be huge. And part of the reason for that is that the first Platteville Dodgeville game was the same kind of game that the first Prairie du Chien Platteville game was. In fact, as a matter of fact, it was the Dodgeville coach's first loss, as in his first loss as a varsity coach. And Platteville went to Dodgeville and just dismantled them, and I have to believe Dodgeville remembers that. Their coach is going to make them remember that, and they're going to want to come to Platteville in a week and a half and, basically exact revenge. So that game is going to be huge. And it's probably, or at least possibly, going to leave whoever is the loser there out of the conference race, possibly, unless somebody can then knock off Prairie du Chien before the regular season ends. So that would be my takeaway from what's going on right now, which is basically that the teams at the top, with the exception of Galena and the NUI West, you kind of feel like the teams at the top are pretty even with each other in each conference.
Yeah, and just kind of glancing at the standings again, you have conferences that have like 3 teams at the top, 3 teams at the bottom, and there's really no middle ground. It's either you're really, really good or you're not quite as good. And the teams that have been good have played some pretty competitive games for the most part, with the exception of the one that you just mentioned between Platteville and Prairie du Chien. But, there's plenty more basketball to be had on both the boys and the girls side. But the postseason is going to be here before we know it. The calendar is going to be turning to February next week, and we're going to be looking forward to seeing how these final regular season games pan out and how that shapes the conference title races. Thank you, Steve, again for the chats on both the boys and the girls side. And that wraps things up for this week's edition of the Queen Bee Radio High School Sports Roundup. Tune in for another episode coming up next Thursday on the Queen Bee Radio Sports YouTube and SoundCloud channels.